Property experts believe Auckland could be facing a housing crisis within 20 years. Lisa Phillips from property managers Erskine Owen says part of the reason is that the number of people moving into the city is soaring. Many Aucklanders could be forced to live in terraced housing and apartments with shared outdoor space.
Auckland has 60% of the country's population, so we're getting the lion's share of population, so that's one aspect. And then we've also got to look at natural increase and net migration. But the big thing here is that we are getting the lion's share of population growth. So when people do come into the country, 60% of those people are coming into Auckland.
Can we predict when this housing crisis is going to hit?
Well, that's really going to depend on how Council addresses this issue, so that's not really for me to say, but what we do know is that under the current regional growth strategy, we have a certain capacity, which at the moment is roughly about 170,000 households. What we do know based on demand projections is that for the next 15-20 years is that we need approximately 200 households. So we've got a shortfall of approximately sort of 30,000 that we're looking to address over the next sort of 15-20 years. So it's really, we're going to have some exhaustion of supply and by the time we get to 2031, but it's about how Council addresses that in the meantime to sort of when that sort of crisis would happen, so to speak.
Will there be a greater demand in some areas of Auckland versus others? For example, will more people want to live perhaps on the North Shore? Will there be a greater demand maybe in the central city?
Well, I think demand is kind of interesting because if we just sort of have a look specifically at what we call conventional density housing, which I think is of most interest to Aucklanders, because conventional density housing is what we term the standalone dwelling with on more than 400 square metres of land. So that's sort of similar to what some of us grew up with, it's got sort of backyard, front yard. That is what is at threat a lot sooner than 2031. So we're expecting that supply to be exhausted by 2023. So we're looking at something around the next 12 years for that to be exhausted. Then there are some areas of Auckland that will have that supply of conventional density housing exhausted even earlier. So we're looking firstly at Manukau City, and we're talking sort of a time frame of perhaps the next 5 to 7 years, followed closely behind by Auckland City and then North Shore City.
Okay, so what's the solution? Is it more subdivision? Is it terraced housing?
The solution is definitely higher density housing, and Kiwis, particularly Kiwis living in Auckland, are going to have to get their heads around living closer together. We're going to have to cosy up.
The quarter acre section, that dream is gone, isn't it?
I think that is going to be harder to retain for, I've got young children, and I think what is the housing options going to be for them growing up? It's not going to be as attainable to have that sort of quarter acre dream. We're going to have to sort of redefine what the Kiwi dream is in terms of housing. So yes, you're right, it's going to be apartments, it's going to be terraced housing, and there's going to be still some standalone housing, but it's obviously going to be on a much smaller parcel of land, and possibly combinations where we have some high density housing and shared space between sort of a cluster of dwellings.
Is the solution just to go up? Do we start to live in apartments more than what we do now? Is that the solution here? More high-rise, make Auckland a more high-rise city?
Sorry, as
a solution to the housing crisis, should we have apartments? Should we be sort of learning to live in 30-storey buildings more in the inner city?
Well, the solution is, I guess, that we've only got so much supply of land. I guess I need to say here that what we do have in Auckland, and this is not unique to Auckland, is that we've got this ring fence around the city, which is what we call the metropolitan urban limit. So the whole idea of developing Auckland as a compact cities approach, the idea is that we develop Auckland sort of within this sort of fenced area, if you like. So if we're going to take that approach, the only way to address the burgeoning demand is to, either go up or have people living closer together. So we have to have higher density housing. There is no other option. I guess sort of second thing to that is, well, can we consider pushing into onto the other side of the metropolitan urban limit and continue to have some more conventional density housing? That's kind of another issue, and that's definitely an issue for Council to address.
Property manager Lisa Phillips talking earlier on First Line. Let's have a look at the sports stories making news this morning. Here's Sam.